Good evening, everyone. Calling to order Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Hingham, February 28, 2019. First item of business, approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 6, 2019 as written.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Items not on the agenda. Hearing none. We'll get right to it. Capital Outlay. Members of the Capital Outlay Committee, invite you to sit over there. Greetings and good evening. We've read your submittal, but Chair is certainly welcome and invited to make any comments.
Okay,
Wish.
sounds good.
If you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself to the greater community. So
Sure.
they know.
I'm Eric Valentine. I'm the chairman of the Capital Outlay Committee. Here with me representing from the AdCom is Libby Claypool and Ed Gatos, and then also absent is Mike Donovan and Matt Goulet.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. All right, Mr. Chair, what do you got?
So for fiscal 20, well, would you like me to go into our process and background, or just jump right into the numbers?
I've listened to it a few times, so let's get down to business.
Right. So for fiscal 20, we're recommending 4.58 total funding for capital projects. The funding sources for those capital projects, as recommended, is $2.4 million from the tax levy, $350K from available reserves, which is for the Foster School warrant article, assuming it's approved by the townspeople. 363K from user rates for building, sewer, country club, and rec department, and 1.46 million from borrowing for the IT fiber optic replacement and upgrade project, the high school gymnasium window project, and the South Shore Country Club financing for turf and maintenance equipment, which will be repaid by user fees.
Okay.
So some notable items for fiscal 20 is a $370,000 purchase for a new ambulance for the fire department, which is core to their mission, as well as roughly $175,000 for 6 new police cruisers, and roughly $170,000 for a new dump truck and snowplow for the DPW.
Hi, Jean. Hi, Jean.
Hi, Jean. Didn't mean to start without you, just don't want to linger any longer than we have to.
How, Eric, and just in terms of the capital requests and things like that, how, did you find this year that the number of capital requests were about the same as in the past? Were they higher, lower?
So compared to last year, excluding the 1.5 million for the fire apparatus, it was roughly the same. Pre-deliberation, it was 3.7 million of requests. We narrowed it down to 2.4 from the tax levy, that is.
Yep.
And in my short tenure, there's always difficult decisions to make.
Sure.
On what to fund, what to defer. As with everything, there's never enough funding. And I think our recommendation would be just to continue the kind of the history of funding the two and change. And slight annual increases so that we stay on top of the town's needs.
Mm-hmm. And, in terms of the requests and things like that, was there anything that was sort of unusual this year in either the types of requests or how the dollars are being allocated? One of the things that I've noticed in the last few years is just that, and I'm sure we're not alone in this, but just the amount of dollars that are being allocated to IT. you know, when you think about that, you know, we're always kind of buying police cars and vehicles and things like that, but it seems like the IT demands both for the municipal offices and for the schools continue to be significant.
Yeah, we've had a similar discussion in a number of years about the increasing technology costs, and one example is the Chromebooks for the middle school, and how that kind of just fell on capital, and it's a significant expenditure each year, as well as their general technology costs. But I think it's just a kind of a sign of the times and how society is more technological.
Sure.
Advanced.
I think what's important for us to remember is that kind of puts, it's a category of capital that's growing, and my guess is that you don't have other categories of capital that are contracting.
Right.
So it's just kind of putting a little extra pressure. I just also wanted to make a note. I was reading in the document, and thank you for giving it to us in advance. I just wanted to make a note for the benefit of the Capital Outlay Committee with respect to footnote number 11 and Plymouth River Elementary School. I just wanted to make the committee aware that when the Board of Selectmen signed a development agreement with the Broadstone Bear Cove, which is the development going up on Beale Street, the town actually secured $1 million that in our development agreement we designated be given to Plymouth River School for the windows. And that development agreement was signed in, what was it, Paul, like 17? 16. And so what happens is that the payments come in, I think it comes in like a third, but it's on track. So, I know there's a lot of talk about the Plymouth River windows. Certainly our board recognizes that that's a capital improvement that needs to happen. I just don't want that $1 million to kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
We had a lot of choices in the town as far as what we could do with that, and we thought that it was important to devote to PRS. So as you're getting requests, and I saw that 2.5 million, there's already $1 million set aside, which hopefully is good news to the town.
Yeah, that's great news, and I will I'll amend the footnote to include that.
I heard that the chief came in when he was reviewing his budget with us and talked about, I guess, maybe somewhat of an acceleration in vehicle purchase. Do you remember the conversations you had with the police department about the vehicle purchase for this year? I think there was some combination of motorcycles as well as cruisers.
I think we did the motorcycles
Last
couple
year.
years, either
Yeah.
if not last year, the year before.
Okay.
I think they were able to do that because it was a no-buy year,
Yep.
which doesn't happen. I think it's every 5 years or so. So they took that opportunity then.
Okay. And how many cruisers?
6 cruisers.
6. Okay. And was
Getting more than a year out of the cruisers.
tough. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I think
it.
they average 20 months.
Plus, I also feel like they're so incredibly equipped now,
Yes.
right? Both in terms of just their vehicular performance, but
Yes.
also all the computer equipment that are in those.
Bells and whistles.
Right,
I
right.
don't think, Eric, there was any change.
There's
in
no
their
change.
normal-
No
yeah,
change. No,
in
we're,
sort of their normal replacement schedule.
I mean, I applaud the $500,000 investment in IT. I think, we heard from our internal audit team that that's an area that the town really needs to keep pace with. And if we don't invest in the critical infrastructure for IT, number one, we can't expect the performance we need out of our people, and we can't protect our information. So, I know it's a lot of money. I know it was a significant chunk of what you had to allocate, but as Mary was saying, I think it's a critical piece of town infrastructure now, is our information technology.
definitely.
And luckily, that's actually not coming from the levy because it's a warrant article, the 500. It's coming from,
Borrowing.
From borrowing.
Yeah.
So that makes
And-
our
and-
life a little easier because it's been on our plan for
Yep.
quite a while, that
And how-
project.
How do you, is that something we decide or you decide? Like, how do you decide what gets borrowed?
AdCom and I think you.
So AdCom decides
I think it's
that?
AdCom and in combination with the selectmen, I think, or town administrator. We definitely don't make that decision.
Okay.
One of the things that we've been talking a little bit about this year, it's come up in different ways, that, the capital outlay process, you folks do such a wonderful job in terms of your process and vetting, and one of the concerns that the board has raised is when you have something for borrowing that's a warrant article, it doesn't go through that capital process. And, we kind of, I think this year, as we had a couple of those projects, it's caused us to ask some questions. So I think one of the things we'd like to do in, like, the off-season, so maybe kind of after town meeting when there's a little bit more time, is to perhaps consider that. And I think we'd also just kind of welcome, your thoughts and your input, because it's, in addition to those projects not going through the capital process, what we end up having is, for this year, for example, 4.6 million in capital. And obviously, in FY '20, we're going to borrow some of that money, so the cost will be spread out over years. But I think there's some questions about kind of process, overall funding, kind of the whole thing, that we need to get into after town meeting.
Because part of my concern was, in raising these questions along the way with some of the warrant articles that we've considered, was, again, as Mary said, I think this is such a methodical process. It's organized. There's a flow to it. Sometimes you have to wait in line. Sometimes with the warrant article, you could pull pretty much any one of these out and they all have merit. It's not like people are asking for stuff they don't need, right? Or we don't need as a town to operate. And so I just was concerned that when we cherry pick some of these projects and make them their own warrant article, again, they're deserving of funding, but is it following the same, the same review process as all other capital? And when we pull some of these things out of line, what does that do to our capital planning as we move forward? So,
well, in my experience, I think, in the high school gymnasium windows, we discussed that last year. We discussed it with the school committee, and I'd say we, reviewed that one. As far as some of the others, it's, the warrant articles kind of, they're in process while we're doing our reviews, and so there's a timing issue there. And so I think maybe the biggest challenge going forward is, getting ahead of the, what warrant articles are going to be presented to the town meeting, before we have our meetings with the department.
right, and I mean, maybe creating some sense of expectation about what department should look to a warrant article for versus, putting up sometimes with the process where, again, you may have to wait a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we can pull together some guidelines of
Yeah, I'd like to.
or
like
general
ma-
guidelines.
Yeah, I would say too, this is my 9th year on capital, and when I first came onto capital, there wasn't really any linkage between warrant articles and
Right.
our budget. So, there were times where we'd look at Article 6, and they're actually, the funding sources in some cases with departments weren't noted on ours. So I think we've done, what you're seeing now is the result of a bunch of hard work over a few years to link this by adding the footnote, noting the funding sources, and actually put on our budget those capital items that are warrant articles. And so, like, if you look at it this year, like, we know, Eric, like the country club is in the borrowing. They came before us. We went through
Yeah, we've reviewed that
that
one.
stuff. In fact, they were originally going to finance it through Toro, and we ran some numbers and said, the interest rate you're paying is so much higher than, borrowing from the town. Why don't you speak to the town administrator, because I think that there's a more economical way to do it. The IT thing, the project, that's been on our radar screen for quite a while. It turned out to be a lot more expensive than it originally intended. Trying to think of some of the other big numbers that are in there. Obviously Foster, we know. There's, the
Extraordinary
350
items, yeah.
warrant article, 350K, we know about that. But also, just to give you some more comfort, is once the school department went through what that entailed, we noticed some items in out years that were kind of contemplated to be part of that. So I think, Eric, you added the footnote to that out year item so that we know next year, hey, that's supposed to be part of the 350, so it should kind of come off our. So I think that this is an evolutionary process. There's a lot I think, a lot more connection between the levy piece of it and the warrant articles and alternate funding sources. So I think it's a result of, because it wasn't like this, I can tell you, 9 years ago.
And, you know, I think we kind of have to remember, sometimes we tend to think of debt as free money. You know, we sort of borrow it, so it doesn't come out of capital outlay, and, yeah, it's in a line on the budget, but it's not free money, it's taxpayer money. So I think, you know, again, especially as the cost of some of these things is going up, you know, you've got sort of your everyday, you know, as you like to say, stuff, you know, police cars, things like that, and then we've got the schools, the other, you know, big buildings, and we've got stuff now that's in between that maybe is like the $500,000 and up. And, you know, to me, because we're having a greater frequency of those things, I think some of that is what's driving some of these questions. So, you know, I think right now we get ourselves through town meeting, but we, as I said, look forward to a conversation about kind of how are we doing all that, what do you see, what suggestions, and, you know, to just kind of continue to improve the way we do things.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
What are the age of the bulletproof vests that are being replaced? Any idea? Police department?
They have is it a 10-year?
Yeah, I want to say.
And I think those are like, there's literally like a, isn't there a like an expiration date on it?
There's an expiration date, and I think they're custom to each officer.
Yeah, so I think
So they need them for their new officers.
yeah, I don't know why I'm thinking.
I get mixed up between the fire department equipment life as well as the.
You getting
bulletproof vest.
15? Is that what's going on here, or?
15
I don't
vests?
think it's 15, oh, 35 years.
Each for
was
the
like,
next 5
that's
years.
Yes, 15 vests.
Okay. On the turnout gear for the fire department, my memory is that they had an oil leak where there was a certain number of these that were damaged beyond repair and had to be replaced, and there was an insurance issue. Do you know whether or not the town needed any kind of recovery there?
That didn't come up this year. These were for anticipated new hires in the next year, as well as, I believe, backup.
Yeah, that might have been an off-season item, Paul, that came up that was probably discussed with the town administrator, because they'd have to file an insurance claim.
Right.
Like, actually, it's funny you bring that up, because just recently, we had, I don't know.
The harbor master, yeah.
The harbor master, yeah, I mean, his truck that's fully equipped like a police vehicle got totaled. And so the question was, how is that gonna be,
Accident?
pardon me?
An accident?
Yeah, someone hit it while it was parked.
Parked, yeah, I don't think the harbor master was in it, but that's another one of those issues where they were like, well, should we come to Capitol, how do we do it? And we said, well, if you're gonna file an insurance claim, you probably should go to, you know, the town administrator first and see how to handle that, and then presumably anything they're short, covering it from the cost, could potentially come out of the mooring permits, which is what that's intended for.
All right.
So those things happen in the off-season, so this just happened to come up, but it's similar to what you were just talking about, an insurance issue.
On the library, I know there's a $20,000 recommendation with respect to exterior security cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Did the library ask for any more than that, or is that what they asked for?
This is in addition to a request last year for some additional cameras. So this is for, I think,
The second phase.
yeah, second phase of cameras. So I think it was
Will they
additional.
be fully outfitted with the cameras they deem necessary after this expenditure?
Yeah, they initially asked for, I think, 12, and then this is increasing it by, I don't know, 6 or 8. And
that for most.
they identified blind spots that they needed to fill with additional cameras.
So I think this is the second
Second
funding
phase, yeah.
cycle. I
Yep.
think we did.
We did
first
some last
piece,
year, yeah.
19.
And these, you know, with that, we contemplated the library warrant article, and these would have been reusable or transferable to a new building, so that's why we funded it. or recommended it for funding.
And that's something these days we have to be careful of, so we don't want to put good money after bad if we know there's, so we always ask, is that something that if changes were made to your facility, that we could be reused,
Good.
and those could.
Getting back to the fire department, was there any discussion with respect to the ladder replacement, or replacement of the Quint?
Yeah, they said that the build is on track, and they expect to get delivery, I believe, in May.
Okay.
And then there'll be, I guess, extensive training on the unit. And I think they were gonna plan a
Do they have the
reveal.
designated drivers yet?
They didn't go into that detail,
Okay.
but they did indicate that there's gonna be significant training, on the unit prior to being in service.
And I forgot, are they selling the old Quint, or are they keeping it?
I think they're trading it in, maybe?
Trading in,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's not significant
I think the
dollars.
biggest discussion there was whether it's going to be called the Quint, which apparently has a bit of a nostalgia for the fire department, or whether it's going to be, because this new vehicle is actually a tower truck, so whether they're going to call it Tower 1 or Quint 2. So we'll see what they,
Keep us posted on
stay
that.
tuned. That was a very important thing that came out of that discussion.
I see you made a note with respect to the preliminary cost of the fire station. $7 million each.
Yeah, that's what they indicated.
They being
Chief Murphy.
chief, okay.
Preliminarily rough estimate, subject to significantly change, all the caveats.
Thank you so much.
And Paul, I would say on that one, that was also in response over the years to people kind of saying, I know your capital outlay, we don't really have a long-term planning capital committee, but we've tried to kind of also incorporate some of those bigger projects so that they're aware, citizens, when they read the warrant, are aware of those things, so.
Appreciate that.
May I just, so I do this every year, but, right now, we're anticipating voting budgets next Tuesday. Our current, the last version of the forecast, we have about a $1.2 million deficit, which it's not as big as we've had in some years, but, sometimes that last bit is challenging to close. So it's been the practice, we've been asked by the advisory committee to prioritize the requests we had. I would just say to the capital outlay committee, as we've asked you to do in the past, that depending on how the budget comes out, we may kind of go back to you to ask you to, prioritize. If, again, in kind of closing the budget, sometimes we get to the point where, we all got to kind of give a little. So, just as we've been asked to be prepared to prioritize, I'd make the capital outlay committee aware of that as well. And I know.
We were made aware of that, Mary, just actually today.
Oh, good,
I think,
okay.
I don't know if that
Yep.
was,
Yeah, I
if
heard.
it was, so we're trying to put together a meeting for next week to do that. And as you guys know, we've done that in the past, but we hate to give that list over, because that means we're offering things that could be cut, but we realize that if that happens, at least it's in our hands to determine, based on our priorities, what are the first things if we had to.
Yeah.
So we're on it.
It's never easy for any of us, because I think you experience what we do, which is every request is worthy. Our department heads are very conscientious. They don't ask for things they don't need. We tend to try to get the most out of our assets and our people. So anyway, I appreciate the continued cooperation.
Yep, yeah, we'll pull that together and provide
Next
it.
week, yep.
Thank you so much for the work you've done.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
One
Very-
and all.
And I want to say this is Eric's only second year on Capitol, first year as chair, and he's done a wonderful job,
Doing a
so
great job.
it's
there,
nice
guys.
to have it in good hands.
Good.
Please
pleasure.
thank your colleagues who aren't here tonight. We
Will do,
appreciate
yep.
all the hard work.
We will. All right.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Jean.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching at home, because there's nobody in the room, it's a short meeting, but it's our third evening meeting this week, so I'm glad the last meeting is the shortest one. Michelle, would you care to wax.
Come on, Michelle, now's your chance. Tom's not here.
Tom's not here.
Come on.
Fire away.
Nothing to report tonight, thank you.
Karen, I'll turn to you.
I've just been right here at Town Hall with you, Paul, so.
Okay, hang it in there.
Ready to offer a motion?
Before we sign off, I do want to say that last night, the 3A Task Force, or as I enjoy calling the Summer Street Corridor Project, we met, we went over the contemplated 25% design submittal that will in fact be submitted to the state DOT for further review, and I'd like to thank the committee. Judy Sneath is the chair, Deirdre Anderson for her hard work, years of it, on this issue, Bryce Blair, Alan Peralt, Roger Fernandez, our town engineer, Harry Sylvester, Tom Molinari, and the engineering firm DCI. This project, just to refresh the public's recollection, will go from the Lobster Pound on Broad Cove Road down 3A, around the bathing beach. The Rotary, as you know it, will have a similar but not identical to design as to what's there now. And the new design going up Old Colony Hill on Summer Street will include a single lane in each direction with a median separated by a barrier. So it's an exciting time ahead. We're on pace. Our engineer informs us that he anticipates that this will be received positively by the state because we've put a great deal of effort and money into the design so that we can get on the list, so to speak, for tip money sooner than later. So we're going to have, we have two major projects going on right now, Derby Street Corridor, and soon to commence redesign, reconstruction of the intersection at Derby and Whiting Streets. And with any luck, in a couple of years, we'll be working on 3A. So exciting time for the town in terms of road building, and it's always my more enjoyable task. So on that note, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye. Good night, everybody.